How's it going, Magpies? Magpie Leon here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the potential for Halo Infinite's 10-year plan and what it can mean for the future of the game. So for those of you that aren't aware, 343 Industries have stated that they have a 10-year plan for Halo Infinite, which essentially means that Halo Infinite should be getting updates for at least 10 years, but that also means there won't be another mainline Halo game within that time. There might still be spin-offs, but there won't be any new mainline entries from now until, for the next 10 years. But what does this actually mean for the future of Halo Infinite? What does it mean for updates for the game, for future content? And how will it impact the game overall? So obviously, first and foremost, I think this means that we'll be getting multiplayer maps, new weapons, all that sort of thing throughout the game's lifetime. New weapon skins, new armors, different battle passes, all your sort of multiplayer content that you come to expect. Obviously, they've already stated how they plan on having battle passes that are themed around different Halo games and different things relating to Halo. So you'll have all your different ones based around the different games. You probably have ones that actually just genuinely add, bring content back from older games and whatnot. You'll have new maps, all that sort of thing, new game modes, pretty much just things to keep the game fresh over time. But I think this is definitely going to go much further beyond than the multiplayer. Halo Wars 2 already had a couple of different story DLC, and I think Halo Infinite is going to follow in its footsteps, expanding the story as time goes on. Alongside this, I think we'll probably see even more graphical updates to the game as time goes on, since obviously 10 years from now, hardware and everything is more than likely improved, and they'll probably understand the hardware better to be able to improve the graphics of a game. I imagine, although Halo Infinite already looks great visually, I imagine in 10 years from now it probably has the potential to look even better. But going back to what I said, the main thing I want to talk about today is the sort of story impact this can have on Halo Infinite. As there won't be another mainline game for at least 10 years, that means that Halo Infinite is more than likely going to have story DLC. With the game being a full price, £50, $60 game, and the multiplayer being free, obviously there'll be other stuff that's included when you pay for the game. But I imagine this probably means that we're more than likely going to get the story content for free, or at least I'd hope so, or maybe at least some of it since you are paying full price. And although this is definitely going to be the biggest Halo game story-wise with their open world, you'll obviously get a lot more playtime out of it, so to understand if the DLC wasn't necessarily free, I'm going to assume that's the route they're going with. So obviously we know the Banished are the primary antagonists for Halo Infinite, or at least it definitely appears that way. And I think that will be the case for the majority of the game. They're probably always going to be present throughout their sort of 10-year line that the game's got planned. But I think this means that different antagonists from the franchise will also be introduced too, whether they're brand new factions or returning ones. Something I think I've mentioned before is that I think the Flood will appear in Halo Infinite, but I don't think they'll have a very big role in the base game, but rather have a DLC centered around them. And this applies for other factions too, like maybe the Prometheans will show up during Halo Infinite with Cortana. I don't actually think Cortana's going to be dead, but I do think maybe she won't necessarily play a big part in the base game, and maybe she'll actually play an even bigger role in a story DLC that's completely centered around her. I think this applies for other characters too, so let's say Escharum is the main antagonist for Halo Infinite's base story, but then Atriox, who's obviously the leader of the Banished, maybe he's introduced a little later on down the line as the primary antagonist and maybe the final boss. I think this also means that you could see story DLC come out for the game that are actually focused where you play as a different character, maybe one where it's actually focused on characters from Halo Wars and you play as someone like Jerome, or maybe rotate between Jerome, Douglas and Alice. I think something like this could be quite interesting and create a bit more of a unique spin on the game's story. Maybe another one later down the line where you get to play as the Arbiter. This could actually also introduce playable elites into the multiplayer, because I think if you're going to be able to play as an elite, like a character like the Arbiter in the story, then maybe they will implement it into the multiplayer. And I think this is why playable elites aren't actually a thing yet, because I don't think it's that they don't want to add them. I think since they want to keep the multiplayer lore friendly or whatever, they'll probably want a story reason to be able to add them on later on. So I guess if they do it where they want to make a DLC where he plays the Arbiter, most of the groundwork there to implement playable elites into the multiplayer is already done. So I think this is something they will more than likely do. This could also mean we get a DLC where you get to play as a member from the Banished. Imagine actually getting to play as Escharum, sort of post-ring destruction, where he goes around fighting Spartans and Marines. This would be really interesting because obviously we've never really fought humanity properly in Halo Infinite. Well, in Halo. We've never fought humanity properly in Halo. Yeah, you fight some Marines in Warzone in Halo 5, but you never really had to properly fight humans. So I think this could be quite interesting if we actually get a DLC where we get to play as the Banished. Having a Spartan boss fight would be really cool. Maybe, in fact, if it was where you got the opportunity to play as someone like Hyperius, and then the end boss for his story, you fight Locke. Something like that would be really cool. Obviously, this is also a way to keep people coming back to the game, since once you've completed a game campaign, once you've completed a game's campaign, there's only so many times you'll probably play before you stop playing it. So I think constantly expanding on the story for 10 years is going to keep people coming back to Halo Infinite constantly. Even if it's just where they add new weapons to the game, but then they're accessible through the actual regular story. Overall, I hope 343 definitely makes this 10-year plan work. I have hope in them, I think they will, and I think it'll be quite interesting, sort of seeing all these new weapons and content added later on down the line, like weapons, vehicles, multiplayer maps, and then additions to the story, which is something I definitely think is going to happen. The whole theming for Infinite is obviously like sort of about hope. They have the whole Discover Hope thing going on, so I'm going to assume that the base game is about reigniting hope in humanity, that they can in fact defeat the Banished. So I think implementing, well, maybe even not just the Banished, but like Cortana and all that as well. So I think if they have the base game centered around one theme, and then have different DLCs like centered around other like sort of themes and characters and aspects of Halo. One thing I haven't seen many people touch on is the fact that they created that new Halo ring at the end of Halo Wars too. So maybe for a DLC we actually get to go to that ring, or maybe there's DLC where we're not even on a ring and we get to go to different planets and all that sort of stuff and explore different areas of Halo's universe. I think something like that would be really unique, as it really helps to the sort of world and galaxy building of the Halo series. Imagine if later on down the line we did have a story where you got to play as Brutes and had a story where you got to play as Elites, and then both of them added to the multiplayer. That would be really cool. Like, imagine getting to play Invasion, but it's actually humans and Elites versus Brutes and Elites, because obviously you've got the Swords of San Helios are on the side of humanity, and then you've got Elites that are working with the Banished as well. So something like that would be really cool. I definitely think this means other modes will be expanded upon too, like how 343 have obviously recently updated Forge for Master Chief Collection. I reckon you'll see all kinds of new items that will help you build even better maps in Forge mode, and I think something like that, again, would be really cool. And maybe even additions of new modes later on, like really big stuff like Invasion or different variants of Firefight. Like, I quite enjoy Warzone Firefight on Halo 5. In fact, I enjoy Warzone. I think something like Warzone, but without the microtransactions playing a big part in it. Like, literally, since Big Team Battle is now a 12v12 anyway, just something like Big Team Battle, but with AI opponents spawning the map, like bosses. I think that would be pretty sick. But anyway, I think that's all from me today, guys. If you are new here, subscribing would be appreciated. I guess I'm on the road to 400 now, and we are growing rapidly, which is insane, so I just want to say thank you for that. But yeah, if you are new here, consider subscribing, that would be cool. And if you're returning, you know, leave a like on the video. But let me know down in the comments what you actually think of Halo's 10-year plan. How do you think it's going to affect the game? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a negative thing? I do think it's going to be weird that we're not going to see a mainline Halo game for at least another 10 years. Although we will definitely have spin-offs here and there, like Halo ODST 2, that would be cool. Halo Infinite ODST, although then again, I guess that would be a story DLC for the game. But yeah, let me know what you think down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one.